I was talking on the fifth security, which was protective security, uh, which basically means both security in terms of, the physical security being met by the social institutions, but also security from potential. Actually, if you think about it, it is not that difficult. If someone comes to your house to kill you or rob you, uh, you are provided with if you are provided with some security, uh, you are provided for a potential misfortune you might experience as an individual. Similarly, for example, if I broke my leg and cannot earn money, if the society helps me, that's also a kind of security for a misfortune I might be experienced. I might have experienced basically. Different types of misfortunes which we might have partial control on. Uh, if the society protects us against these misfortunes, basically, that is also a kind of freedom according to Amartya Sen, which um, allows us to increase our life quality. Not only people who live those actual misfortunes, but also the people who haven't, because they can act more securely, knowing that society is behind them if they experience a misfortune, basically. So, Amartya Sen basically discuss different cases and different graphs data, and all of them show actually again mixed results, uh, and those results show it is possible that growth and development is not necessarily correlated with each other. Here I'm presenting you three cases and then two graphs of his article, but you might read the whole article where these cases are described in more detail, and also the, uh, there are some other graphs. The first case is growing without freedoms. A country might have a high growth rate, but that high growth rate might not improve the living conditions in those countries. How can we measure it? The basic life standard, the basic measurement of maybe the most basic freedom or capability, life expectancy, might have stayed the same, while the country continues a high growth rate, or develop, increase very slowly. India and Brazil are an example of this case, according to Amartya Sen. And we will see in the graph actually the basic, at least what basic indicator shows for them. Then we have China. China is a case which has developed freedoms first. Of course, not you might say political freedoms, but it kind of developed protective security and social opportunities, basically, and it especially created in late 60s and 70s a health system which increased the life standards of the Chinese people significantly. Um, and to some extent, maybe, at least in these two things, it has developed, and the basic capability, life, and maybe bodily integrity also has been developed by China, we might say. Um, and bodily integrity in terms of, having a healthy body, basically, is kind of something that is met more in China after 1960s and 70s when healthcare system has developed. And there are cases where freedoms, and then on this basis of relatively people with better capabilities, China started to have a high growth rate. And then you have cases where you have freedoms but no development. And Sri Lanka and Kerala is a state of India. So, but India is a federal country, so state has a semi-independence, and that independent, relatively semi-independent, autonomous state has developed freedoms, especially in terms of life, basically, but could not create growth, basically. And this case might show actually freedoms doesn't necessarily guarantee growth, but they can also exist without growth. So having freedoms doesn't necessarily make you have a better economic system, but at least you can maintain basically them without being better off in terms of your production level. And actually, Amartya Sen discussed also why this is a possibility. And for example, one thing he has claimed was because usually things, for example, teachers and doctors, I mean, well, when you have a relatively low income country, then life expenses are also low. So you need to pay less for the doctors and teachers, which actually might decrease the cost of building the social services that develop at least the basic freedoms or very basic capabilities. So a low-income country can build that infrastructure at relatively low costs because of the low labor costs for those services. So you don't need much capital, machinery, expensive equipment for, well, at least giving the basic health services or education services in a country. So here you see the 1994 life expectancy at birth and GNP per capita. You see Kerala and China at that time. Now China is at 10,000, but at that time it was below 1,000. Sri Lanka also, but all of them have a life expectancy above 70. While, for example, in Brazil you have more than 4 times, maybe 8 times more income per capita. However, life expectancy is at 60, actually, just above 60, much worse. And Namibia, even, I mean, it is much better than China in terms of GDP per capita, but its life expectancy is just 60, basically. So this is one graph where actually the case in the previous slide is summarized. There is another graph. This will be the last graph for Omsan, but it's also interesting. It looks to one country, but it looks its history. This is in England, UK, and it shows increases in life, which is this one, and growth. Note that at the time when growth is down, increase in life expectancy becomes higher. It ripples twice, once here, 1911, 1921, and then it happens, this is, moment, let me be sure, life expectancy is this one, the square one. It goes down here, it goes up again here, it goes down. So the points when it was especially up, the years where life expectancy has significantly improved were the war years, 1911 and 1921, 1940, 1951. Why? And those years, growth the economy has done very bad. Actually, in 1911 and 1921, the economy is at minus, basically minus 0.1. Why is this the case? Well, the basic explanation for this is in the war years, the basic food items, basic items, necessary items for life are rationed. So when they are rationed, they are distributed more equally. So the people in the society who have relatively low income were also able to get those items, especially the food. As a result, people see a much higher increase in their life standards, even though, on average, even though the growth rate is low, and as a result, also this also show its effect in the life expectancy. So basically, as this one thing this graph shows is again, growth and improvement in capabilities is not necessarily correlated. Again, growth, increase in production level might be an important indicator, uh, but there is no direct correlation. Um, well, and here, from this point of view, comes the idea maybe capabilities or the able to meet those needs should be measured separately by a different indicator. Now, there are different indicators actually. The most simplest one is the HDI, which aim to measure just that. I mean, the development level independent of GDP. Actually, in case of HDI, it is not independent. GDP is part of the measurement. So if your GDP is high, HDI assumes that you have a higher development level. But there are other indicators, of course. If your GDP is high, but your life standard is low, that low life standard will decrease your HDI level, development level. So GDP per capita becomes, in that case, only one of the indicators for the measurements of the life standard. So now we will start to look to the one topic which is more relevant to this course and how all we have seen in the previous part of this lecture is used for in order to measure, let's say, make measurements relevant to that topic, and that's gender inequality. So how can we measure gender inequality? We could discuss how can we measure development, and there are also answers. But let's ask instead, how can we measure gender inequality? And there are also many answers, and those many answers are, each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. And Van Steveren, in one article, in a single article, he has actually comparatively looked to different indexes and their advantages and their disadvantages, and he doesn't side with one of them. He just tells, I mean, every index has its own separate usefulness, benefits, and drawbacks, limits, basically. And here are the indexes he has looked at: Gender Equality Index (GEI), Gender Inequality Index (GII). This is Erasmus University Rotterdam. This is United Nations. This is OECD, Social Institutions and Gender Index (SEIGI), Global Gender Gap Index (GGPI). World Economic Forum has developed this, and this is created by the Economist journal Women Economic Opportunity Index. Now, we will look to the variables in each of them, those indexes. So this is how we will continue in the next part.